The Mackenzie Shirilla case is one of those stories that sounds like a tragic accident at first, but the deeper investigators looked, the darker and more complicated it became. It happened early in the morning on July 31, 2022, in Strongsville, Ohio. A Toyota Camry was driving through a quiet industrial area. Inside the car were three young people: 17-year-old Mackenzie Shirilla, her boyfriend Dominic Russo, and their friend Davion Flanagan. Within seconds, that normal drive turned into a nightmare. The car reached nearly 100 miles per hour and crashed into a brick building. Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan died at the scene. Mackenzie survived, but she was badly injured. At first, many people thought it was just a terrible car crash, the kind of tragedy that happens in a few seconds and destroys families forever. But when police started investigating, the story changed. Prosecutors later argued that this was not a normal accident. They said Mackenzie intentionally drove the car into the building. Mackenzie Shirilla was a teenager from Strongsville, Ohio. Like many teenagers, her life included friends, social media, parties, relationships, and emotional drama. Her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, was 20 years old. Their relationship was described as complicated and unstable. Reports and court evidence suggested that they had fights and relationship problems before the crash. Prosecutors argued that this relationship trouble was important because it helped explain motive. They believed the crash was connected to Mackenzie's relationship with Dominic, and that it was not simply a random driving mistake. But the defense side has always pushed back against that idea. Mackenzie's family and legal team have argued that she may have suffered a blackout or medical episode, and that she did not intentionally crash the car. So from the beginning, this case became a battle between two very different stories. One side saying it was intentional murder, and the other side saying it may have been a tragic medical event. On the morning of the crash, Mackenzie was driving the Toyota Camry with Dominic and Davion inside. According to the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, the car made a controlled turn onto Progress Drive, then accelerated rapidly, reaching around 100 miles per hour before hitting a business sign, and then crashing into the Plitco building, a brick structure in Strongsville. Prosecutors said the vehicle data showed the accelerator was pressed and the brakes were not used before impact. That detail became one of the most important parts of the entire case. Modern vehicles often contain an event data recorder, sometimes called a black box. It can record information like speed, braking, and accelerator use before a crash. In this case, prosecutors said the black box data showed that Mackenzie's foot was on the accelerator and that there was no evidence of braking in the final seconds before impact. Investigators also looked at surveillance footage from the area. To prosecutors, the combination of high speed, no braking, and the straight path toward the building suggested intention. They argued that if this were a normal accident, the driver would have tried to slow down, brake, or avoid the building. Instead, according to their case, the car accelerated directly into it. Mackenzie survived the crash and was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. But Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan never came home. That is the most important part of the story. Two young men lost their lives. Dominic was not just a boyfriend in a crime story. He was someone's son, someone's brother, someone's friend, and someone with a future. Davion was not just a passenger. He was also a young man with his own family, his own dreams, and his own life ahead of him. True crime stories often focus heavily on the accused person, but the victims should never be forgotten. The families of Dominic and Davion had to live with the pain of knowing that their loved ones died in a violent crash that prosecutors later said was intentional. The case went to court, and Mackenzie chose a bench trial, meaning there was no jury. The judge heard the evidence and made the decision. In 2023, Mackenzie Shirilla was found guilty of murder and related charges. She was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after 15 years. The prosecutor's office said she was sentenced for intentionally crashing her car and killing her two male passengers. Legally, that is her current status. She is convicted, but the debate around the case did not end with the verdict. Mackenzie's defense and family have continued to argue that she may not have been conscious during the crash. They claim she may have had a medical condition that could cause blackouts. According to later reports, her legal team has pointed to messages and medical concerns that they believe should have been investigated more deeply. In 2026, the case gained new attention after the Netflix documentary. The crash brought the story back into the public spotlight. Reports say Mackenzie's attorneys asked the Ohio Supreme Court to review issues related to her appeal, including claims about possible medical evidence and how her original defense handled the blackout argument. As of the latest reports, the Ohio Supreme Court had not yet decided whether it would hear that appeal. This is why the case remains so controversial. Some people look at the evidence and say the court got it right. They point to the speed, the lack of braking, the accelerator data, and the relationship problems. They believe the crash was intentional. Others look at the blackout claim and say the medical angle deserves more attention. They ask whether a teenager would really drive herself into a building at 100 miles per hour, knowing she could die too. That is the question that keeps people debating this case online. But legally, it is important to say this clearly. Mackenzie Shirilla was convicted in court. The defense claim of a blackout is her side of the story and has not overturned the conviction. For YouTube, you should present both sides carefully. Say prosecutors argue, the court found, the defense claimed, and her family believes. Do not present unproven claims as facts. The reason this case went viral is not just because of the crash. It went viral because of the mystery around intention. Was this a deliberate act, as prosecutors argued and the judge found? Or was it a medical blackout, as Mackenzie's side claims? It also went viral because everyone involved was young. The crash was shocking, the evidence was dramatic, and the story feels like something that could have started as teenage relationship drama but ended in the worst possible way. In the end, the Mackenzie Shirilla case is not just a story about a car crash. It is a story about relationships, anger, responsibility, evidence, grief, and two families who lost their sons forever. Whether people believe the court's decision or question the medical claims, one fact can never change. Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan died on July 31, 2022, and their families will carry that loss for the rest of their lives. So the question for the audience is this: do you believe this was an intentional crash, or do you think the blackout claim deserves another look? Share your opinion respectfully in the comments, because behind this viral case are real people, real families, and two young lives that ended far too soon.